Hello, everyone, and welcome to the English Globe, your favorite podcast for learning English in a fun, simple, and effective way. My name is Adam, and as always, I'm here with my amazing co-host, Julia.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to have you with us today. Whether you're just starting to learn English or you've been practicing for a while, this podcast is for you. We're here to help you build confidence and improve your English skills step by step.
That's right, Julia. And today, we're diving into a topic that's absolutely essential for every English learner: building a strong vocabulary. Now, Julia, when you think about vocabulary, what comes to mind?
Well, Adam, vocabulary is like the building blocks of a language. Without words, it's hard to express yourself, understand others, or even think clearly in a new language. If you have a strong vocabulary, you can communicate effectively, read and write better, and even enjoy things like movies or books in English.
Exactly. Vocabulary is the key that opens so many doors in your English learning journey. But we know it can sometimes feel overwhelming, right? There are thousands of words in the English language, and many learners don't know where to start or how to remember them.
That's why we're here today. In this episode, we're going to guide you through everything you need to know about building a strong English vocabulary. We'll share practical tips, fun methods, and even common mistakes to avoid.
Yes, and we're also going to show you how to learn new words in a way that's simple and enjoyable. We'll cover strategies like using flashcards, keeping a vocabulary journal, and learning through reading, listening, and even playing games.
Not only that, but we'll also talk about how to use these new words in conversations. After all, it's one thing to learn a word, but it's even more important to know how to use it naturally in your daily life.
Absolutely. And for those of you who love a challenge, we've got something special planned later in the episode. We'll give you a list of new words and encourage you to create sentences with them throughout the week.
That's right. Learning English should never feel like a chore. It's about finding joy in the process and discovering what works best for you. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear plan to start expanding your vocabulary effectively.
So, whether you're looking to boost your confidence in speaking, improve your writing, or simply understand English better, this episode is for you. We're here to help you take your vocabulary to the next level.
We're so excited to get started. But before we dive in, make sure you have a notebook or a vocabulary journal handy. You'll want to take notes, write down new words, and maybe even jot down some of the fun ideas we'll share.
And don't forget to stay with us until the end, because we'll be sharing some quick tips and a motivational story about a learner who transformed their English skills through vocabulary building.
Sounds great, Adam. All right, let's get started with the basics. First, why is vocabulary so important for learning English?
I'm glad you asked, Julia. Let's break it down step by step. Now that we're getting into the heart of today's topic, let's talk about the importance of vocabulary in learning English. Vocabulary, in many ways, is the backbone of a language. Without words, it's almost impossible to form sentences, express your thoughts, or even understand what others are saying. When you think about it, every interaction we have in a language, whether it's spoken or written, starts and ends with words. They are the tools we use to communicate, and the more tools you have in your toolbox, the easier it is to share your ideas, feelings, and thoughts effectively.
That's so true, Adam. I think people sometimes underestimate just how foundational vocabulary really is. Let me put it this way. Imagine trying to build a house without bricks. You might have the blueprint, you might have the skills, but without bricks, there's no way to construct a solid, lasting structure. Vocabulary works in the same way for language learning. Grammar, pronunciation, and other aspects of language are important. But without a strong base of words, those other elements can't come together in a meaningful way.
Absolutely, Julia. And what's even more interesting is that vocabulary doesn't just help you with speaking. It's vital for every single aspect of language use. For example, when you're listening to someone speak, your ability to understand them depends largely on how many of the words they're using you already know. If their sentences are full of words you're unfamiliar with, it can feel like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. On the other hand, If you have a broad vocabulary, it's like having all the pieces in place. You can easily grasp what's being said and respond appropriately.
That's such a great way to describe it, Adam. And let's talk about reading for a moment. When you read something in English, whether it's a novel, a news article, or even subtitles on a movie, your understanding of the text comes directly from the words you know. If you're familiar with the vocabulary, you can enjoy the story or information without interruptions. But if there are too many unfamiliar words, you'll find yourself constantly stopping to look things up, which can be frustrating and break your focus.
Exactly, Julia. Reading is such an important skill, and having a strong vocabulary makes it so much more enjoyable and productive. But it doesn't stop there. Writing is another area where vocabulary plays a huge role. Think about it. When you sit down to write an email, a report, or even a message to a friend, your ability to clearly express your ideas depends on how many words you can draw from. If your vocabulary is limited, you might struggle to find the right words to convey what you mean. But with a broader range of words at your disposal, you can write confidently and effectively.
And that confidence extends to speaking as well, Adam. When you're having a conversation, your vocabulary is your toolkit. If your toolkit is full, you can pick the exact word you need to express yourself clearly. For example, instead of always saying, "I'm happy," you could say, "I'm excited," "I'm thrilled," or "I'm overjoyed," depending on the situation. Each of these words adds a layer of meaning and precision to what you're saying, making your communication more engaging and accurate.
That's such a good example, Julia. And it brings us to another important point. Vocabulary is what allows you to add depth and nuance to your communication. It's the difference between saying something in a simple, basic way and being able to express yourself with detail and emotion. For instance, if you're describing a beautiful sunset, you could say, "It's nice." Or you could say, "The sky is painted with shades of orange and pink, and the clouds look like soft, golden cotton." The second description is so much richer and more vivid, and that's the power of vocabulary.
I love that example, Adam. It really shows how vocabulary isn't just about learning words. It's about unlocking your ability to connect with others and share your experiences in a meaningful way. And that's why it's so important to focus on building your vocabulary, no matter where you are in your English learning journey. It's not something you do once and then forget. It's an ongoing process that makes every other part of language learning easier and more enjoyable.
That's such a good point, Julia. And let's not forget about real-life situations where vocabulary is essential. Imagine you're traveling in a country where English is widely spoken and you need to ask for directions, order food, or explain something to a taxi driver. If you don't know the words you need, those situations can be really challenging and even stressful. But if you have a strong vocabulary, you can handle those situations with confidence and ease, making your travel experience so much smoother and more enjoyable.
That's so true, Adam. And the same goes for work. In today's globalized world, many jobs require at least some level of English proficiency. Whether you're writing emails, participating in meetings, or giving presentations, having a good vocabulary can make a huge difference in your professional life. It's not just about knowing the technical terms for your industry. It's also about being able to express yourself clearly and persuasively in any situation.
That's such an important point, Julia. And it's not just about work or travel either. Even in your personal life, vocabulary plays a key role. Whether you're chatting with friends, enjoying an English movie, or reading a novel, having a rich vocabulary makes those experiences so much more meaningful and enjoyable. It allows you to connect with others on a deeper level and fully engage with the world around you.
Absolutely, Adam. Vocabulary really is the foundation for everything in language learning. It's what allows you to take your skills to the next level, one word at a time. And the great thing is, building your vocabulary is something you can start doing right now, no matter where you are in your learning journey.
That's right, Julia. And in the next section, we'll share some practical tips and strategies for building a strong English vocabulary step by step. So grab your notebooks, everyone, because we're about to get into the good stuff. Now, it's time to get into the practical part of today's episode: how you can actively build and expand your English vocabulary. It's one thing to understand why vocabulary is important, but it's another to actually take steps to grow it every day. Don't worry, building a strong vocabulary doesn't have to feel overwhelming. In fact, with a little consistency and the right methods, it can become a fun and rewarding part of your learning journey. Let's start with some step-by-step guidance to make the process simple and effective.
One of the easiest and most effective ways to grow your vocabulary is by learning a few new words every single day. And by a few, we mean anywhere from 5 to 10 words, depending on how much time you can dedicate. Think of it this way: if you learn just 5 words a day by the end of a year, you'll have added over 1,800 words to your vocabulary. That's a huge difference. The key here is consistency. It's better to learn a small number of words every day and really focus on remembering them than to try to learn a lot at once and forget most of them.
That's such a good point, Julia. And to make this daily learning habit even more effective, I highly recommend using tools like flashcards or vocabulary apps. Flashcards are great because they allow you to test yourself, which helps your brain retain the words better. You can make your own flashcards with index cards, or you can use digital apps like Anki or Quizlet, which are super convenient and even allow you to study on the go. Apps like Duolingo or Memrise are also fantastic for building vocabulary in a structured, interactive way.
Another great idea is to keep a vocabulary journal. This is a small notebook or even a digital file where you can write down all the new words you learn. But don't just write the word, include its meaning, an example sentence, and maybe even draw a little picture to help you remember it. Writing things down is such a powerful way to reinforce your memory, and over time, your journal will become a valuable resource that you can refer back to.
Let's move on to one of my favorite methods for building vocabulary: reading. Reading is such a rich source of new words because it exposes you to vocabulary and context. When you read a book, an article, or even a short story, you're not just learning words, you're seeing how they're used in real sentences. This helps you understand not just the meaning of a word, but also how and when to use it.
Absolutely, Adam. And here's a little tip for anyone who wants to use reading as a vocabulary building tool. Always keep a pencil or highlighter with you when you're reading. Whenever you come across a word you don't know, underline it or circle it. Once you've finished reading, take the time to look up those words, write them down in your vocabulary journal, and try to make your own sentences with them. This process helps you turn passive learning into active learning, which is much more effective.
That's such good advice, Julia. And don't feel like you have to read long or difficult texts to build your vocabulary. Even reading short stories, news articles, or blogs can be incredibly helpful. The key is to find material that interests you, because the more you enjoy what you're reading, the more likely you are to stick with it and keep learning.
Now let's talk about listening and watching, which are fantastic ways to pick up new vocabulary. Watching English movies, TV shows, or podcasts is not only entertaining, but also a great way to hear how words are pronounced and used in natural conversation. One of the best tips I can give is to watch with subtitles, especially if you're a beginner. Subtitles help you connect the spoken words to their written forms, making it easier to understand and remember them.
That's a great tip, Julia. And if you're someone who enjoys music, listening to English songs can be another fun way to build your vocabulary. Pay attention to the lyrics, and whenever you hear a phrase or word that catches your attention, write it down and look it up. Songs often use casual conversational language, which can be really useful for daily conversations.
Of course, learning words is just the first step. To truly make them part of your vocabulary, you need to use them. And that's where speaking practice comes in. One of the best ways to practice is to challenge yourself to use at least 1 or 2 of the new words you've learned in your daily conversations. For example, if you've just learned the word improve, you could say, "I'm trying to improve my English skills the next time you're talking with a friend or tutor."
That's a great idea, Julia. Another method is to create sentences with your newly learned words, even if you're just speaking to yourself. For instance, if you've learned the word explore, you might say, I want to explore new places this weekend. The more you use a word, the more natural it will feel, and eventually, it will become part of your active vocabulary.
And finally, let's talk about making vocabulary learning fun with games and activities. Word games like Scrabble or crosswords are not just enjoyable, but also incredibly effective for building your vocabulary. These games challenge you to think about words, their meanings, and how they fit together, which is great practice for your brain.
That's so true, Julia. And if you prefer something digital, there are plenty of online vocabulary-building games and apps that can make learning feel like playing. For example, games like Wordle, Wordscapes, or even some trivia apps often have vocabulary-related challenges. These games are perfect for practicing when you're relaxing at home, or even during a quick break at work or school.
Exactly, Adam. Learning vocabulary doesn't have to feel like a chore. When you mix it up with different activities, tools, and methods, it becomes something you look forward to doing. And the best part is, as you keep building your vocabulary, you'll notice how much easier and more enjoyable it becomes to communicate in English, whether you're speaking, listening, reading, or writing.
That's right, Julia. So remember, start small, stay consistent, and most importantly, have fun with it. And in the next section, we'll answer some of your questions and share even more tips to help you on your journey to building a strong English vocabulary. Now that we've covered some powerful strategies for building your English vocabulary, we need to shift gears and talk about the mistakes that can derail your progress. These aren't small, harmless errors. They're common traps that many learners fall into, often without realizing it. Understanding these mistakes and avoiding them can save you a lot of time, frustration, and effort. Julia and I are here to break down these pitfalls so you can stay on the right track and continue improving with confidence. Let's start with one of the biggest challenges: memorizing words without any context.
When it comes to learning vocabulary, one mistake stands out more than any other: trying to memorize individual words without understanding their context. This is such a common issue, and I totally understand why it happens. Many learners feel that if they can just memorize a long list of words along with their definitions, they'll automatically be able to use them fluently. But the truth is, language doesn't work that way. Memorizing words in isolation might help you recognize them in a test, but it won't help you use them naturally in a conversation.
That's such an important point, Julia. Think about it. Language is all about communication. Words aren't isolated. They're always part of a bigger picture. For example, take the word run. On its own, you might think it simply means to move quickly on foot. But in context, it could mean so much more. If I say, I run a business, it has nothing to do with running physically. It means managing a company. Or if someone says, let's run an idea by the boss, it means to suggest or discuss something. Without context, you could easily misunderstand or misuse the word.
Exactly, Adam. That's why learning words in context is so critical. When you're studying new vocabulary, always try to see how the word is used in a sentence or a real-life situation. For example, instead of just memorizing that delicious means tasty, look at sentences like, the chocolate cake was delicious, or this restaurant serves delicious meals. Better yet, try to create your own sentences using the word. If you can picture yourself enjoying a delicious meal while saying the sentence, you're engaging your memory on a deeper level, and you're far more likely to remember the word and use it correctly.
Another great tip is to pay attention to phrases and collocations, which are groups of words that naturally go together. For example, with run, you often see phrases like run a race, run errands, or run into trouble. Learning these combinations gives you a much better understanding of how the word functions in different contexts. And remember, language isn't just about knowing words. It's about knowing how to put them together to express your ideas clearly and effectively.
Let's move on to another major mistake: not revisiting the words you've already learned. I see this so often with learners who feel excited to move on to the next batch of words as soon as they've finished with the current list. But the reality is, if you don't review the words you've learned, you're going to forget most of them. And that's not because you're bad at learning. It's just how memory works.
Exactly, Julia. Think of your brain like a garden. When you first learn a new word, it's like planting a seed. But if you don't water that seed, by reviewing and practicing the word, it won't grow into a strong, healthy plant. Instead, it'll wither and disappear. The same goes for vocabulary. You can't just learn a word once and expect it to stick forever. You need to revisit it regularly to reinforce it in your memory.
That's why I always recommend creating a review schedule. For example, after you learn a new word, review it the next day, then a few days later, and then again a week or two after that. This technique is called spaced repetition, and it's proven to be one of the most effective ways to retain new information. Apps like Anki or Quizlet are great for this because they're designed to help you review words at just the right intervals.
Another great idea is to use the words you've learned in different ways. Write sentences with them, use them in conversations, or even create a short story featuring those words. The more you engage with the words, the stronger your memory of them will become. And don't worry if you forget a word now and then. That's normal. The important thing is to keep revisiting and practicing until the word becomes a natural part of your vocabulary.
Finally, let's talk about a mistake that can make learning feel overwhelming. Trying to learn too many words at once. It's easy to fall into this trap, especially when you're feeling motivated and want to make rapid progress. But cramming a long list of words into your brain in one sitting isn't just ineffective, it can actually slow you down in the long run.
That's right, Julia. When you try to learn too many words at once, your brain gets overloaded and it becomes harder to remember any of them. It's like trying to carry 50 bags of groceries at the same time. You're more likely to drop them all than to get them to your car safely. Learning vocabulary is much more effective when you focus on a smaller number of words and really take the time to understand and practice them.
A good rule of thumb is to aim for 5 to 10 new words per day, depending on how much time you have to study. That might not sound like a lot, but think about it. If you learn just 5 words a day, that's 35 words a week and over 1,800 words a year. And because you're focusing on fewer words at a time, you'll be able to learn them more deeply and remember them more easily.
Another tip is to prioritize quality over quantity. Instead of just adding random words to your list, focus on words that are relevant to your goals or interests. For example, if you're learning English for travel, start with words and phrases related to airports, hotels, and sightseeing. If you're learning for work, focus on business vocabulary. By choosing words that are immediately useful to you, you'll stay motivated and see faster results.
And don't forget to have patience with yourself. Building a strong vocabulary is a marathon, not a sprint. It's better to take your time and learn a few words really well than to rush through a long list and forget most of it. Remember, every word you learn is a step forward, and every step brings you closer to your goal of fluency.
So there you have it. 3 common mistakes to avoid when building your vocabulary. Memorizing without context, not revisiting learned words, and overloading yourself with too many words at once. By being aware of these pitfalls and taking steps to avoid them, you'll make your learning journey smoother, more effective, and a lot more enjoyable.
Absolutely, Adam. And remember, everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the learning process. What matters is how you respond to those mistakes and use them as opportunities to grow. In the next section, we'll answer some of your questions and share even more tips for building a strong and confident vocabulary.
And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time for our vocabulary challenge. Julia and I are so excited to introduce this fun and interactive segment where you get to put what you've learned into action. Whether you're listening to us during your morning walk, in the comfort of your home, or while taking a break at work, This challenge is designed to help you build your vocabulary in a practical and enjoyable way.
That's right, Adam. We believe that learning vocabulary should never feel like a chore. It's about engaging with the language and making it a part of your everyday life. So, here's how the challenge works. Each week, we'll introduce 5 new words. We'll explain their meanings, give you example sentences, and maybe even share some fun facts about them. But we're not stopping there. We want you, our wonderful listeners, to get creative and use these words in your own sentences by the end of the week.
And don't worry, this isn't a test. It's a chance for you to practice and experiment with new words in a way that feels natural to you. You can write your sentences down in a journal, share them with a friend, or even post them on social media. If you're feeling brave, you can tag us so we can see your amazing work. The key is to take that first step and start using the words you learn.
Absolutely. And to make this even more exciting, we're going to walk you through each word in detail. We'll break down the pronunciation, discuss its meaning, and explore how you can use it in different contexts. So, grab a pen and paper, or open up your notes app, because it's time to dive into this week's vocabulary challenge.
The first word we have for you today is adapt. Now, adapt is a verb, and it means to change something in order to fit a new situation or environment. For example, when you move to a new city, you need to adapt to the local culture, weather, and lifestyle. It's a very useful word, especially when you're talking about dealing with change.
That's right, Adam. Here's another example. The company adapted its services to meet the needs of online customers during the pandemic. As you can see, adapt can apply to both people and organizations. It's all about flexibility and adjusting to new circumstances.
So listeners, think about a time when you had to adapt to something new, maybe starting a new job, learning a new skill, or even picking up English vocabulary. Try to use the word adapt in a sentence that reflects your own experience.
Our second word is curious. This is an adjective, and it means wanting to know more about something or being eager to learn. For example, if you're curious about how something works, you might ask a lot of questions or do some research.
Here's another example. Children are naturally curious about the world around them. Being curious is such a great quality. It helps you grow and discover new things. And guess what? If you're listening to this podcast, it means you're curious about learning English, which is fantastic.
So, your task is to think of something you're curious about and use the word in a sentence. Maybe you're curious about traveling to a new country or trying a new recipe. Whatever it is, let your curiosity guide you.
The third word on our list is expand. This is another verb, and it means to make something bigger or to increase in size, number, or importance. For example, the company plans to expand its business to new markets next year.
Here's another example. Learning new vocabulary is a great way to expand your knowledge of English. See how useful this word is? You can use it in so many different contexts, whether you're talking about growing a business, increasing your skills, or even broadening your horizons.
And now, it's your turn. Think about something in your life that you want to expand. Maybe your vocabulary, your social circle, or your experiences, and use this word in a sentence.
Our fourth word is achieve. This is a verb, and it means to successfully complete or reach a goal, especially through hard work. For example, she worked hard to achieve her dream of becoming a doctor.
Another example is, to achieve fluency in English, it's important to practice regularly and stay motivated. This word is all about success and determination, which are both essential when it comes to learning a new language.
So, listeners, what's a goal you're working towards? Use the word achieve to describe it in a sentence. It could be something big, like completing a degree, or something small, like learning 5 new words this week.
Last but not least, we have the word grateful. This is an adjective, and it means feeling thankful for something or someone. For example, I'm grateful for my friends and family who support me.
Here's another example. We are grateful to all our listeners who join us every week and make this podcast so special. Being grateful is a wonderful way to focus on the positive things in your life and share your appreciation with others.
So, take a moment to think about what you're grateful for today. Use this word in a sentence to express your gratitude, whether it's for a person, an opportunity, or even a small moment of happiness.
And there you have it. This week's vocabulary challenge words: adapt, curious, expand, achieve, and grateful. Your mission, dear listeners, is to create your own sentences using these words by the end of the week.
And remember, you can share your sentences with us on social media or keep them in your personal vocabulary journal. The important thing is to practice and have fun with it. We'll check in with you next week to see how you did and introduce a new set of words to keep you going.
So, are you ready to take on the challenge? We believe in you, and we can't wait to hear how you use these words in your own unique way.
Now it's time for one of our favorite segments, our Q&A session. We absolutely love hearing from our listeners, and today we've received some fantastic questions about building a strong vocabulary. This is the part of the podcast where we address your concerns, clarify your doubts, and provide you with practical, easy-to-follow solutions to overcome your vocabulary challenges. So, Julia, what's the first question we have for today?
The first question comes from Sarah in London. She asks, I always forget the new words I learn. How can I remember them better? Adam, I think this is such a common struggle for language learners. Many people feel frustrated when they put in the effort to learn new words but can't seem to retain them for long. What advice would you give to Sarah?
That's a great question, Sarah, and you're certainly not alone in feeling this way. Remembering new words can be challenging, but there are some effective strategies to help them stick. One of the most powerful techniques is to learn words in context, rather than in isolation. For example, instead of just memorizing the word serendipity and its meaning, try to use it in a sentence that reflects your personal experiences, like, I found my favorite book in the library by pure serendipity. By creating a connection between the word and your life, you make it more memorable. Another tip is to use repetition strategically. Review the new words you've learned several times throughout the day and over the course of the week. Spaced repetition apps like Anki or Quizlet are great tools for this. These apps present words to you at increasing intervals, ensuring they remain fresh in your mind. Also, try to revisit words in different contexts, maybe through reading, listening, or writing. What do you think, Julia?
I completely agree, Adam. Context and repetition are key. I would also add that visualization can be incredibly helpful. Let's say you're learning the word meticulous, which means being very careful and paying great attention to detail. Imagine an artist painting a masterpiece with tiny, precise brushstrokes. Associating the word with a vivid mental image can make it much easier to recall later. Sarah, another practical solution is to teach the new words you learn to someone else. When you explain the meaning and usage of a word to a friend, or even just say it out loud to yourself, you're reinforcing your understanding. Plus, teaching is a great way to test whether you truly know the word.
Let's move on to our next question. This one is from Raj in India, who asks, I often feel overwhelmed by the number of words I want to learn. How can I manage this? That's such an important question, Raj, because trying to tackle too many words at once can actually slow your progress.
Absolutely, Raj. When you try to cram too many new words into your brain at once, it's like trying to carry too many bags. You'll likely drop a few along the way. A much better approach is to set small, manageable goals. For example, aim to learn 5 to 10 words each day. This may not sound like much, but over a month it adds up to 150 to 300 new words.
That's so true, Julia. And Raj, make sure you're prioritizing quality over quantity. It's better to truly understand and use 5 words than to skim over 50 words that you won't remember. Focus on high-frequency words, the ones you're most likely to encounter in conversations, books, or media. These are the words that will give you the most value for your effort. Another tip is to categorize words into themes. For example, If you're learning words related to travel, focus on words like itinerary, destination, and passport. By grouping words into meaningful categories, you make them easier to learn and recall.
Great advice, Adam. Now, our final question today comes from Maria in Brazil. She asks, how can I improve my vocabulary when I don't have many opportunities to practice English in real life? This is such a relevant question for so many of our listeners who may not live in English-speaking environments.
It really is, Maria. And the good news is that there are plenty of ways to practice even if you're not surrounded by English speakers. One of the best things you can do is immerse yourself in English through media. Watch English movies, TV shows, or YouTube videos with subtitles. As you watch, pause to write down any new words you come across. Then, try to use those words in sentences or even short stories.
That's a fantastic tip, Adam. I would also recommend finding a language partner online. Apps like Tandem or HelloTalk connect you with native English speakers who want to learn your language. You can chat with them, exchange cultural ideas, and practice using new vocabulary in a natural way. And Maria, don't underestimate the power of talking to yourself in English. It might feel a little silly at first, but narrating your thoughts or describing your surroundings out loud is an excellent way to practice vocabulary and build confidence.
So there you have it, everyone. 3 of the most common vocabulary-related questions and our best advice for tackling them. To recap, learn words in context, focus on quality over quantity, and create opportunities to immerse yourself in English, even if you're practicing alone.
And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to learning vocabulary. Experiment with different techniques, find what works best for you, and most importantly, be patient with yourself. Building a strong vocabulary is a journey, not a race.
We hope these tips help you on your language learning adventure. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We love hearing from you, and who knows, your question might be featured in our next Q&A session. As we reach the end of today's episode, we want to leave you with some encouragement and motivation to keep you going on your vocabulary building journey. Learning a new language is no small feat, and we know it can sometimes feel like a long and challenging process. But remember, every word you learn is a step forward, and with time, all your hard work will pay off.
That's right, Adam. Sometimes when we're in the middle of the learning process, it's easy to lose sight of how far we've come. But when you look at the bigger picture, you'll realize that all those small steps, every new word, every sentence you build, every conversation you have, are shaping you into a more confident and capable English speaker. And today we want to share a couple of inspiring success stories that show how powerful consistent vocabulary learning can be.
Absolutely. One story that always comes to mind is that of Tim, a student from Spain, who struggled with speaking English when he first started. Tim had the passion to learn, but like many of us, he found himself overwhelmed by the number of new words and expressions. However, Tim committed himself to learning just 5 new words each day. He didn't rush, and he didn't overcomplicate things. Every day, he focused on adding a few more words to his vocabulary, and over the course of a year, his vocabulary expanded by more than 1,800 words. Tim started using those words in conversations with his friends, colleagues, and even online. What happened? He became much more confident and fluent in his speech. By focusing on steady, manageable progress, he was able to reach his goal.
That's such a fantastic example, Adam. Tim didn't try to memorize hundreds of words at once, and instead, he made a daily habit out of learning a small, manageable number. Another inspiring story comes from Marie, a woman in her 50s who started learning English later in life. At first, Marie was self-conscious about speaking in English because she felt her vocabulary was too limited. But Marie didn't give up. She started by reading books that interested her: fiction, self-help books, and even children's books to build a solid foundation. Slowly, she began picking up new words, and even though she wasn't in an English-speaking environment, She practiced every day by using new words in sentences. Within 6 months, Marie was able to hold conversations in English, and she even started writing short stories in English. Her vocabulary had grown tremendously, and her self-confidence soared.
It's so inspiring to see stories like Marie's. It just goes to show that it doesn't matter when you start learning English. What matters is your commitment to keep going, even on the tough days. Remember, vocabulary building isn't a race. Some days you might feel like you're making slow progress, but the key is consistency. Even on the days when you don't feel like studying, doing just a little bit, learning 1 or 2 words, reviewing a few flashcards, or listening to a podcast in English will bring you one step closer to your goal.
And here's a motivational tip for everyone listening. Celebrate the small victories. Every time you successfully use a new word in a sentence or remember a word you learned last week, take a moment to appreciate your progress. This will help you stay motivated and remind you of how far you've come. It's easy to focus on the words we haven't learned yet, but take a minute to reflect on everything you've already achieved.
That's such an important point, Julia. And let's not forget about the power of community support. Surround yourself with people who share your goals. Join online groups, connect with other learners, or even find a language buddy who you can practice with. Having a support system can make all the difference when the going gets tough.
Exactly. Language learning is a journey, and you don't have to walk it alone. Whether it's through a language partner, a study group, or even a supportive family member or friend, having people around you can give you the boost you need to stay on track. And remember, every successful English speaker has faced the same challenges you're facing now. They've all had moments of doubt and frustration. The difference is, they didn't give up.
So, as we wrap up today's podcast, we want to remind you that you're on the right path. No matter where you are in your vocabulary building journey, keep going. Stay consistent, stay motivated, and don't forget to celebrate the little wins along the way. You're doing an amazing job, and we're so proud of your progress.
Yes, and remember that language learning is not just about memorizing words. It's about making those words a part of your daily life, using them in conversations, and connecting with the world in a deeper way. You're not just building a vocabulary, you're building the ability to express yourself, to share your ideas, and to connect with others. So keep going, stay positive, and let your journey inspire others too.
We believe in you, and we can't wait to hear about all the amazing progress you'll make in the coming weeks and months. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep speaking English with confidence.
We'll see you soon. And don't forget, every word you learn brings you closer to your goal. Keep up the great work and enjoy the process.
As we near the end of today's episode, let's take a moment to recap the key points we've covered. We've discussed how essential vocabulary is for mastering English, and how a strong vocabulary can significantly improve your ability to communicate clearly and effectively. From real-life examples to practical tips, we've explored step-by-step methods to help you build and expand your word bank.
That's right, Adam. We've also looked at strategies like reading, listening to English content, practicing speaking, and using fun games to make vocabulary learning enjoyable. The important thing is consistency. By making vocabulary building a regular part of your daily routine, you'll see steady progress. Remember, even small steps count. Whether it's 5 new words a day or reviewing old ones, every little bit helps.
Exactly. And don't forget to avoid some common mistakes like memorizing words without understanding their context or trying to learn too many words at once. It's important to pace yourself and truly understand how each word fits into the language and how it can be used in different situations. If you take your time and commit to learning regularly, you'll be amazed at how much your vocabulary can grow.
Absolutely. The key is to stay consistent, be patient with yourself, and most importantly, enjoy the process. It's all about making vocabulary learning a part of your daily life, and with each new word you learn, you're not just improving your English, you're opening up new opportunities for communication, connection, and self-expression.
And we really hope today's episode has inspired you to take action. If you haven't started using the methods we discussed, like keeping a vocabulary journal, watching English shows with subtitles, or using flashcards, now's the time to start. Don't wait for the perfect moment, just take that first step. The key is to make vocabulary learning a part of your everyday routine.
Absolutely. We'd love for you to join us again in future episodes. We've got some exciting topics coming up, like strategies for improving your English speaking skills, tips for mastering English grammar, and even how to use technology to enhance your learning. So make sure you're subscribed to the English Globe podcast so you won't miss any of our future episodes.
We'd also love to hear from you. If you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions for future topics, please feel free to reach out to us. Your thoughts and experiences help us create better content for you. You can leave us a message on our social media platforms or send us an email.
And remember, we're here to support you on your English learning journey. No matter where you're starting from, you can always make progress. Keep learning, keep challenging yourself, and always stay curious.
Well said, Julia. Thank you all for listening today. We're so glad to have you as part of the English Globe community. Keep practicing, keep expanding your vocabulary, and we can't wait to connect with you again soon.
Take care, and remember, every word you learn brings you one step closer to fluency. Keep up the great work, and we'll see you in the next episode.